Good evening and welcome to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. It is the second Tuesday in November, November 17th, 6 p.m. I'd like to call this regular meeting to order. Due to COVID-19, there is no physical meeting location per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Tonight's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube. In addition, the public may call 623-404-9000 and enter the meeting ID number, which is 149-766-1467 to listen to the meeting live, and this is for audio only. Council members and city staff are participating via teleconference. The staff sitting in council chambers are all physically distanced, at least 6 feet apart, and will be wearing masks when they are not speaking. As you may know, Governor Inslee has made updates to regulations in order to combat the resurgence of COVID-19. I want to thank the public, city council, and staff for working with us as we continue to follow these requirements. Please remember to wear masks and maintain physical distance in public spaces. More details about COVID-19 and its effect on city services can be found on our website at www.oakharbor.org/COVID-19. So we'll begin now with a roll call, which our city clerk, Julie Lindsay, will conduct. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Present.
Councilmember Heisen.
Present.
Councilmember Mack.
Present.
Councilmember Servadius.
Present.
Councilmember Wassinger.
Present.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Present.
Councilmember Goebel.
Present.
Mayor, all council members are present via teleconference.
Thank you, Julie. I thought I got it. Guests that are included in any staff presentations may be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. Due to the high wind warning, we are anticipating that we may lose power during this evening's meeting. If power is lost or our internet connection goes down, or if there are not enough city council members to stay connected, the remainder of tonight's meeting may need to be postponed. With this in mind, we have 3 public hearings scheduled on our agenda that must be opened this evening as noticed as they relate to the 2021-2022 biennial budget. These items are time sensitive to meet our requirements for the state of Washington. In light of this, we are requesting that council move to amend tonight's agenda so that items 6E, 6F, and 6G can move on the agenda to right before the consent agenda, so that the budget-related hearings can at least be opened as noticed and, if needed, continued to tomorrow's special workshop. Are there any objections to those proposed changes to the agenda?
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm having a real tough time with my connection, so I keep turning the video off to try and improve the audio call. I could not hear your comments and what changes you would like to make.
Okay, the changes that staff is asking are to move items number 6E, 6F, and 6G to just before the consent agenda, so that the budget-related hearings can at least be opened as noticed, and if needed, continue to tomorrow's special workshop. So,
I had some thoughts on appending the agenda. Do we want to do that when we get to the approval of agenda section?
that's where we're at right now.
I'm not sure if you're able to hear me or see me. Well,
Okay, then we'll go back and I'm sorry, I got a little ahead of myself there. Let's go back to the invocation, and tonight we have Pastor Kevin Scott from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm sorry about that, Pastor Scott. Will you lead us in the invocation, and we'll follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead. Pastor Scott?
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you so much for being a God that we can count on, being a God that we can trust. I pray, Lord, for wisdom and guidance during this time of uncertainty in our country with various things happening, including the new COVID spikes, Lord. Father, I want to pray for our city here in Oak Harbor, and I want to pray for our city council as they navigate through some of these challenges while still trying to keep the city going. I just pray for wisdom for each one of them tonight. As they make some very important decisions, Lord, guide and direct their thoughts and their voting, Lord, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Scott. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we are at the approval of the agenda section. Sorry about that. So staff is asking to move 6E, 6F, and 6G to just before the consent agenda. I see Mayor Pro Tem has her hand up. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move 6, E, F, and G before the consent, on the agenda tonight.
Okay, so a motion to approve with that amended.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented, being amended so that items 6F, 6E, 6F, and 6G are moved to just before the consent agenda. Any questions or input? I see Councilor Servadius has his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully my internet connection holds up. I actually wanted to move all items, so for my discussion here, all items in section 6 to the end, or at least until after 9A, to get through some of the more time-sensitive stuff. Items 6, E, F, and G. I do want to work through those. I think there's some things that are just as time-sensitive that might be before those. And I see that if we don't get to those today, we have them scheduled for tomorrow anyway. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is correct.
I don't know if your mic's on, Mayor.
Yes, that is correct.
So,
Well, we have, yeah, okay. We do have to open the hearings for items 6E, F, and G tonight.
so right now we just want to open a hearing for public comment versus opening it tomorrow?
So we have a motion and a second, and the motion reads to approve the agenda as presented and amend it so that items number 6E, 6F, and 6G are moved to handle right in front of the consent agenda. That's the motion on the floor.
Okay, I have another, and I understand there's a motion on the floor. I understood it was not to approve and move. It's just to move those items. So I will yield and vote because I too want to make an amendment to the agenda. The motion was to move items 6, E, F, and G to just before the consent agenda.
That's the motion on the floor, yes. Any other input or questions? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, that looks like that passes 5-1. So that motion passes to amend the agenda. I noticed that Mr. Weed, were you waving in or did you have your hand up?
Mayor, I just wanted to see if I could help by clarifying why those items are also noted on tomorrow night's agenda. And the reason is that in the event you lose power tonight, we put those in tomorrow night's agenda as a placeholder so that you could finish up your business on those items. So I think it would be appropriate to ask for an additional motion at this time, or at least when you get to those items, to continue them to tomorrow night, only if needed as a result of losing your power. You can wait till you get to those items, but it'll be important to take action up front to continue those items if necessary, so you can address them tomorrow night, just in the event of loss of power.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weed. Councillor Servadius?
Thank you, Mayor. I have two motions that I would like to make regarding the agenda. The first is I move to include a discussion of immediate COVID relief for small businesses as item 5D on the agenda.
Item what number?
5 Delta.
5D.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Julie, did you get that, or you want to read it again? Okay, would you read that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Servadius moved to include a discussion of immediate relief for small businesses due to COVID-19 as item number 5 on the agenda.
5D.
5D, thank you.
Okay, motion and a second. I think that second was Councillor Wassinger? Heisen? Oh, Councillor Heisen, I'm sorry. Okay, any input or questions about that? All in favor, raise their hands. Okay, that passes 6. Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. Okay, Councillor
Thank you, Mayor.
Servadius? Yes.
And the other motion would be to move items 6A through D after item 9A.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to move items 6A through D to after 9A. Motion by Councillor Servadius, second by Councillor Wassinger. Any input or questions about that motion? All in favor, raise their hands. That passes unanimously. Okay. We have an agenda.
Thank you.
So we will then move on at this time to our community comment or citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. Public comment may be submitted electronically to the city clerk at jlindsay@oakharbor.org or by calling 360-279-4539 after 5 p.m. on the Friday preceding the meeting and then prior to the meeting. To ensure comments are recorded properly, please state your name clearly when leaving a message and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And we have not received any public comment for this meeting, so we will then move to item number 6E, which is Resolution 20-35, demonstrating substantial need for 1% property tax levy per RCW 8455-0101. And I think we have our Finance Director? David Goldman here with us. David?
All right. Good evening, everybody. This presentation will comprise the property tax levy and also the statement of substantial need. So for the regular property taxes, 1% is the maximum limit of increase. That increase is based on the implicit price deflator, which is calculated every year. The index that is the index for personal consumption expenditures. It was calculated this year from Q2 of 2019 to Q2 of 2020 and reported by the State Department of Revenue on September 25th, 2020 as 0.6. Whenever that index falls below 1%, it requires a substantial need ordinance. These are the historic IPD rates. You can see that most of the time, the rate fell over 1%. In some years, like in 2009, 2015, and also 2016, and also now 2020, the rate fell under the 1%. And whenever that occurs, if a city desires to go to the 1% limitation, they have to pass a substantial need ordinance. Whenever these go above 1%, though, cities aren't able to, capture that additional cost of living increase over 1% without going to the voters and requesting a levy lift. So the 1% property tax levy is needed to keep pace with the long-term impact of inflation and also to maintain the existing level of services provided by the city to its citizens. The substantial need is defined in the ordinance as based on the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. They're anticipated to continue into the beginning of 2021 and could result in significant tax revenue losses and potential increased cost to the city. The costs to provide many city services tend to exceed the resources, including the amount of the increase of property taxes that's cited under city statutes. And the city faces uncertain short and long-term revenue projections in light of the impacts to businesses and new construction activity as a result of the pandemic. So the levy scenarios are to make no change, and that would be $0. That would be to levy to the index of 0.6. That would bring in another $27,000, or to levy to the maximum of 1%, which would bring in about $44,500. And that calculation is required to be done before any new construction, improvements to properties, changes to state assessed properties, and wind turbines, solar, biomass, geothermal facilities are included. So this is the breakdown of the current levy, the 2020 levy rate. You can see that the city of Oak Harbor's levy rate is just under 2%, is just under 2. Washington State for schools is about 1.84. Washington State exempts just under 1. Island County is about 0.53. The Whidbey Island school bond is 1.7, and school enrichment is 2.28. Cemetery is less than 0.01. Library district's about 0.44. EMS is 0.46. The hospital bond is 0.26. Hospital district general is 0.08, and conservation is 0.04, for a total of 10.8526. That's the current year's 2020 levy. So this chart shows that the valuation, and this is the assessed valuation for the entire city, as the assessed valuation goes down, which it did at the beginning of this decade, the rates tend to go up. And as the assessed valuation climbs, which it did in the last half of this decade, the rates tend to go down. And this is the certified levy that's included. It was included in the budget. You can see that the amount of funds included in the certified levy decreased in 2011 and have increased slightly every year, including to 2020. Are there any questions?
So before we take it up with council, I want to make sure that we've had no communication from public.
That's correct, Mayor. We received no communication from the public. We noticed this public hearing and all items in the Whidbey News Times on October 31st and November 7th, and no public comments were received.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll turn to council.
Mayor, if I could just add one point of clarification. It
Yes.
appears that what happened here was we combined items 6E and F. Item 6E is the substantial need resolution, and item 6F is the public hearing to set the property tax levy. So just to make your record clear, we should make note that the public hearing was opened and make Finance Director Goldman's presentation a part of your record. I don't recall having heard that the public hearing was open, so we want to make that a part of your record and make Mr. Goldman's presentation a part of your public hearing record. And then what will be, after council has discussed and deliberated, there's two actions that will be in order. One is to adopt the resolution of substantial need, and the other one would be to take the action on the property tax levy.
Okay, so we'll have it in our record that the public hearing has been open, and then we'll take it to council at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Weed. So any input or questions from council? Motions? I'm turning to council. I can't see council. Okay, Councilor Wassinger.
Thank you. Mr. Weed, do we also need to do, as you suggested, and now might be the time to make a motion that if needed to extend these items 6E and F to tomorrow if necessary due to power outage, would now be the appropriate time to make that motion?
That's certainly available to the council. It looks like at this point we are going to get through this first public hearing. So if we finish the business on it, it won't be necessary to continue it. But that's a very good point on the other two items that we haven't yet addressed. At the outset, probably a good idea to move to continue to tomorrow only if needed.
So would it be appropriate if I made a motion and just combined all of the public hearings on the agenda tonight? Would that be okay, or should we go one by one?
We basically held the public hearing on this first one, and that's the item on the agenda that we're on. So my suggestion would be to finish up this item, take whatever action council may take, and then a motion on the other two items so that we do have them as placeholders.
Okay, sounds good. I'll just hold off for now then. Thank you. That's all I had.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. Just first as a generic question, I noticed that I won't say none, the only items that were initialed in the packet is item 7A for partial review. Is there any reason that these aren't initialed, just out of curiosity?
It's a good question, and I don't believe, other than they just didn't get done in agendas. I think that's the only reason that they weren't initialed.
And it just makes me feel better if I know that all the different departments have had time to look at them before they come to us. It just makes me feel better. Just my 2 cents. So question, it seems like we do this every year in the December timeframe. Does this decision need to be made tonight?
Should we take that back to David?
I think it's before the end of this month. My guess, David, I think you might know that, or Tally.
So is it before the end of the month of November? Is that Is that our deadline here, David or Tally?
If I could
Yes.
jump in here, my understanding is that you need to set the property tax levy by November 30th under state statute so that the county can do its role in terms of getting ready to assess the property tax. I certainly invite David Goldman to correct me if that's wrong.
No, that's correct. That's exactly what I said, but I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah, it's due at the end of the month to the state.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask, and I know we have this discussion every year, and I'm going to support this and I'll say why, but it just seems interesting with everything that's going on and what we learned from Governor Inslee over the weekend or Monday, that we're fast tracking to the very front of the agenda a tax increase versus maybe just working through our agenda. And I know there's weather out there and a possible windstorm. I'm just not sure sometimes if that sends the right message to the constituents that that's our utmost priority in this entire agenda is to move a tax increase to the front of the agenda. That kind of sits wrong with me. Having said that, the reason I will support this, Mr. Goldman made an excellent point in that as far as the city, we have very few ways to bring in revenue. This is one of them, obviously, property tax. And the statement that he made was, if the IPD is over 1%, we're incredibly challenged to ever capture that. Well, we can't without going to a vote to capture that and keep up with inflation. And if I recall, this is all way back when from Initiative 747 from Mr. Eyman. So I've always supported these, even though I'm not a big fan of putting any more of a burden on the citizenry than possible. We've had lots of talks over the years that this is one of the only ways the city can keep up with the pace of inflation. Everything we know costs more next year probably than it did this year. And the compound interest curve, we'll come back to that. I need to come in and see you, Mr. Goldman. I appreciate the email. It was helpful. It just continues to cost more and more, and we can't ever recapture that. So I will support this. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way, for lack of simpler nomenclature, that we fast track this to the front of the agenda. I would have rather had this at the end, work through some of these other more pressing issues, and then go from there. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I couldn't agree more with Councilmember Servadius regarding the timing issue. It pains me to think that the state didn't give us any leeway, right? I mean, we're living in some really special times and some really tough times, and we get the mandate just like everybody else did on Monday, and now we've got to deal with it, and in the state and in everybody else mind, none of the other timelines change, right? I mean, this doesn't change the fact that we've got to do this year-end stuff, and we've got to do it now, right in the middle of this. And I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. I can't thank Councilmember Servadius enough for adding that agenda item at the involving a local need, and I'm really interested to have that discussion. So, with that said, obviously we don't have a lot of choice here. We're capped at 1% a year. In the years that we have 4% or 2% inflation or 2.5% inflation, we are capped at 1%. And so those years we go backwards. And in the years that we have the opportunity to go forward, if we don't go forward, that compounds, as Councilmember Servadius said, for year after year after year, puts us deeper and deeper in the hole. And that's how cities end up with all sorts of additional taxes and additional revenue sources. We've had to tap transportation benefit district in order to get our streets back in decent shape, and that's been because, of course, declining revenues based upon inflation versus what we could collect from one of our biggest revenue sources. And the streets were the things that end up getting put aside, and now we're having to pay catch up. And the reality is chances of inflation being higher the next couple of years. I'm no financial genius, but after going through what we're going through now, it would be pretty much unexpected. The government's printing a lot of money and is going to have to continue to print the money and put it into circulation. And so next year, we could be looking at 2 to 3% inflation, and again, only being allowed a 1% cap on this issue. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to jump on board and support it. It's for the better, the good, unfortunately, but it's a hard pill to swallow. Lots of people suffering in our community tonight, finding out that their jobs aren't there anymore, and more to come from the restaurant industry. So tough pill to swallow, but this is one of the hard decisions that we get paid the big bucks for, I guess. Thank you.
If I could just make a quick comment on the implicit price deflator. The state deadline for the Department of Revenue to report out to all the cities and counties regarding the implicit price deflator is set at September 25th. The third quarter ends at the end of September. So if that deadline was just a little bit longer, then they would use the third quarter price deflator. And if they use that, in all likelihood, it would not be under 1. And also, another comment, I worked in Florida for a number of years, and our fiscal year starts on October 1st. And we have to do a lot of these levy calculations and reporting in September. Now, what happens in Florida every September? Hurricane season. And whenever there's a hurricane churning in the Gulf or it's coming close to Florida, even if it doesn't hit, the governor there allows the deadlines to be pushed out when there's an emergency like that. I'm not trying to pile on to Inslee or anything. I'm just giving you what I've noticed happens from my experience of working in Florida when there's an emergency like this. So,
Thank you, David. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I too will jump on the bandwagon. It's bad when we don't know the results. There's so much unknown, but the reality is too many years we're below catching up with inflation, and we never do catch up. We're just trying to at least maybe get to even. But for planning our budget and balancing what the departments want, what our revenue is or isn't this year, we also need to know if we have $27,000 or $44,000 or no increase for our budget. So, and that's got to be done before the end of December. So we must make a decision about this. Are there any other comments? I'll make a motion. I can't see the hand.
I see a couple of hands.
Okay, I will wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just verifying that right now we're still on the motion to adopt resolution demonstrating substantial need, and then the next motion will be on the actual tax. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything.
You're right. You're exactly right.
Yeah, if I might chime in, yes, the sequence needs to be the consideration of Resolution 20-35 before you take action on Ordinance 1916. So you're correct, Councilor Heisen, in the order of how we need to do this.
Okay, we have a question also from Councilor Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've really got mixed emotions about this. Things are pretty tough out there for a lot of people, but at the same time, I understand the math. I understand the need for the revenue. It's just catching everybody in a really, really bizarre situation here, both our taxpayers and the city. Everybody's running short of revenue on both sides. But at the same time, if we don't do this, it will catch up to us. And as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, we're going to need to do the budget. But let's be frugal with that budget. Let's be smart with that budget. If we're going to take this tax increase, which reluctantly I'm going to support, let's show the taxpayers, the ratepayers, that we're using their money in best interest. So with that being said, we'll move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't want to belittle the dollar amount, but Mr. Goldman, can you share with us an idea of what this reflects on an average, say, $400,000 home? What does equate?
I didn't do the calculation, but we did ask the county property appraiser today, what's the average assessed value? I think it was around 300,000, right? So let me, I got a calculator here. Let's try to do some quick math. So what is assessed value?
Every penny counts in these times. So like I said, I don't
No,
want
I'm going to need to, I'm going to need some more.
Minimize
It's going to
it.
take a little bit, it's going to take a little bit longer. It's not a whole lot of money. I can tell you that, but it's going to take a little bit longer to look at how many properties, it's a little more involved than just that. But just so you know-
my calculations is we're talking a couple of dollars a year. It sounded like.
Yeah, it's about in that ballpark. I don't want to give you like the wrong number, but it's in that
But
ballpark.
quick math, number of properties we have in the city divided into the amount of revenue it's going to generate. Obviously, it's spread differently. Businesses and more expensive properties take a bigger burden than the lower end properties. But the quick math, we're talking a couple dollars a year. But again, I don't want to minimize that, but I want people to understand this is how seriously we take this, right? It is a big deal, and it just really sucks that we have to make a decision like this tonight. But thank you for hearing me out.
So we need a motion, I guess, at this point to adopt Resolution 20-35. Anybody?
Mayor, I'll make that.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, motion to adopt Resolution 20-35 demonstrating substantial need for 1% property tax levy increase. Got a motion?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilor Servadius. Any other input or questions? All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, I can't hear outside, so I assume if the wind's blowing, this would be a good time for a motion, as Councilor Wassinger suggested. Or do you want to just move to item number 6F at this time? Item number
Mayor, did council entertain the motion to adopt ordinance 1916?
No.
Which is item
Not yet.
6F?
Nope. So that would be the next recommended action, is to adopt ordinance number 1916 to increase property tax by 1%. Any motion to that?
I think the weather will hold. Let's keep going.
Okay. Councilor Wassinger, you want to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to approve, and my computer screen just went blank. Was that
Okay.
was that a ordinance?
1916.
16,
Ordinance 1916.
Ordinance 1916.
to increase
Thank you.
property tax by 1%.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action motion by Councilor Wassinger, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, that passes unanimously. So thank you. I know that's a difficult thing to do. So we will then move to item number 6. Where is that at? G, which is information meeting for council, as no decisions are to be made regarding the final draft budget, but I think we need to, I'm going to turn it over to David at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the public hearing for the mayor's preliminary 2021-2022 biennial budget. This is a budget overview of all the different funds that the city has. I would list every single fund, but it just wouldn't fit on the screen. But that is in the backup. That's in the budget book. But these are the fund categories. The general fund and general fund reserves and general fund capital is the top row. You can see how it's changed over the years from the actuals for 19, the amended budget for 20, and the preliminary or proposed budget for 21 and 22. The next row are special revenue funds to include streets and also senior services and some other funds as well. Debt service funds are the third row down. Capital projects funds are the fourth row down. The fifth row are the enterprise funds, which includes water, wastewater, storm drain, and so on, also the marina. And the last row are the internal service funds, like the fleet funds, replacement funds, the IT fund, and so on, which provide services to all the other funds. You can see for 19, the total, when the actuals came in, the total was about 121 million. The amended column is the third row from the right. The amended 2020 budget is about $107 million for all the funds. And then the preliminary budget for 21 and 22 is there as well, 112.2 million for 21 and about 103 million for 22. Here's another view of of what you just saw in a pie chart. You can see that the biggest group of funds we have are the enterprise funds, over 50% of the city. Internal service funds are also pretty large, about 16, 17%. General fund and its reserve fund is about 18%. Debt service funds are very, very, very low. And the special revenue funds are about 9%. This is the capital project summary. Just a summary of what we went over a couple meetings ago. For 21, and we're only going to talk about the 2 years that are in the budget. Of course, the 6-year capital plan, we went over all 6 years, a couple weeks ago. But for 21, the total is about $18.7 million. There's 69 capital projects or purchase requests, and there's 18 vehicle or equipment replacement requests for a total of 18.7. For 2022, you have 26 capital projects / purchase requests for about $11 million. Then you have 14 vehicles or equipments for 1.4. The total is 12.4. And here's the different funding sources for that. You can see that the general fund, it's a small amount, 90,000 for 21. 22 is 45,000. Streets funds a small amount as well. Once you start getting into the bigger funds like the water fund and the sewer fund, and also special revenue sources and the replacement funds, you'll see that there's those are more, those carry more of the bulk of the funding requests. And also you can see on the third row from the bottom, project fund balances for 21. That's the largest category that we have for 21. And that's basically, funds that were appropriated by the council in previous years that are just carried forward to, these years, 21 and 22. So the council went over some options at the workshop last week, and based on what we heard, we grouped all the options into two groups. Group one are the options that there was a lot more talk about. It seemed like the council was leaning towards doing these options. And we have group two, which there was less talk about. So let me just go over the options for you. So in the general fund, in the administration department, this is the economic development specialist. This is for 2022. And I added a column for the combined biennial 21-22, so you can see both, both combined. So you can see that, for the economic development specialist, the total for everything is about $100,000 for 2022. And that's in the general fund. And then you got next you got the parks in the general fund. This would be a park specialist starting in 21. The total for that person would be $64,000 in 21 and $66,000 in 22 with inflation. The total over 2 years is $130,000. That's out of the general fund. Streets fund. This is the paver. It'll be a used paver, well, slightly used paver. Instead of getting a new one for almost twice the price, you can get a used one or slightly used one for $120,000. That's with shipping and all that. That's for 21. So yeah, that's over in the streets fund. So that would come out of there. I believe they're looking at other options to pay for this. I think if Public Works wants to chime in now or later, you know, they can talk about like a lease type option or different ways that they're thinking about funding this. But or I can continue. Let me continue. We can come back to it. The shop facility fund. You can see that there's a new GIS technician locator in 21. Design engineering technician start in 22. Eliminate the administrative assistant starting in 21. And then you got the benefits that go along with the salaries. And then over here, you got the truck for the GIS technician locator over here, 40,000. And then you got the equipment for those positions as well. So the total for 21 is 42,000, and for 22 it's 120 for a total of about 160,000. And this will come out of the shop facility internal service fund. Oh, and then citywide, there was some discussion on the different COLAs. It sounded like people were leaning towards 1.5, or at least wanted to discuss it more. So you know, I sent I kind of went over how these COLAs were calculated. Where you know, the first year, what we did was we took, let's use 1% for an example, flat even 1%. You take 1% multiplied by the base salaries and wages to get this number right there. And then in the second year, you carry that number forward, but plus you got to multiply another 1% against this higher base, because with inflation the base goes up and all that. So basically, what you're doing is you're multiplying 1% on top of this. Obviously, since they got a pay bump in 21, they keep the pay bump, so that gets paid again because you're the biennial budget. So the total cost is really, for the 1%, 373. For the 2%, it's 1.5%. It's about 560, and so on. About 2/3 of this is general fund, and the rest are all the other funds. And here's the group 2 options. This is development services general fund. There was some talk about, well, it wasn't as much talk about these options as it was about the other options, but this one is for a new permitting software for 21. That would come out of the general fund. And for the fire department, there was talk about putting a reserve for replacement amount for these engines and 2 engines and the ladder into the reserve for replacement account, and also 80,000 for an extraction tool. This would come out of the general fund. So there wasn't as much talk about this as there was about some of the other ones we went over. The total cost of this would be about $526,000. So the next steps from tonight. Well, the first step is to deliberate the presentation and let us know what you're leaning towards putting in the budget, so we can incorporate those figures in the budget for December 1st. But also there's internal service allocation adjustments that would have to be done as well. So when we add things into different funds in the budget, there might be internal service changes that would be incorporated into the funds that would, into the internal service, funds in the 500 series, and they allocate all their costs out. So there might be some slight changes to various funds to account for that. There's also an item that during the budget process, it just got overlooked, I think, but there's legal software expenses regarding GovQA, which is the public records request software, and also ProLaw, which is what the legal department uses to, look up laws and ordinances and decisions. I've never used that. They can give you more information, but basically the total cost of these two together is $10,000 in 21 and $3,300 in 22. That would be something that would have been included in the mayor's proposed budget, but it just got lost in the shuffle, I presume, during the budget process. So the next step tomorrow, we're going to have a budget workshop where the departments are going to come in and they're going to just talk about their departments and make departmental presentations. December 1st is another public hearing to adopt the final biennial budget for 21 and 22. And if additional deliberations needed, we put December 15th aside for additional deliberations and possible adoption if it's needed, before the end of the year. And then on January 1st, 2021, the biennial budget will take effect. Thank you, and, staff's available to field any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. So we don't have any input from the public, I assume, Julie? Is that correct?
That's
Okay,
correct, Mayor. We
okay.
received no comments.
Just verify that. There is not a recommended action, but I turn to council at this time for any input or suggestions. Go back to see if I can see the council. Councilor Servadius. Oh, there they are. Can you hear me, Councilor Servadius?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Goldman, you may or may not have this information at your fingertips. I'm looking in our packet at page 291.
All right, gotta find that. All right, I have the packet, 291. Let me type in 291. Okay, that's all the funds.
Yes, can you remind me, very top, the amendments, 1.4 million in amendments for the general fund?
Oh, yeah.
I know we
we
had
went
a
over
slide
those.
at our workshop that broke those down. I'm trying to remember what they were.
Yeah, let me see if I can get those out as soon as I can turn this on. How come this isn't turning off? All right, there we go. Let me pull that up real quick. I have that open. Nope, let me get that. No, over here. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm pulling it up. The computer decides to cooperate. Going slow. There's the amendments. All right, perfect. Share screen. Share. Share. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to refresh on those. I was just doing some math, and I could not find that slide. Thank you. I don't have any, I will probably, this is a lot to digest. And I've still got some concerns, so I'm going to wade through this, and we'll all be back together tomorrow talking more about the other non-governmental funds, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Goldman, I want to clarify one thing you presented tonight in the options was the parks specialist position. In my notes from our workshop, there was quite a bit of discussion about the water specialist and some about the park specialist. I just wanted to make sure that the option you provide was indeed supposed to be the park specialist and not the water specialist.
Yeah. It seemed like there was a consensus on the water specialist, so we removed. It was a reduction of one position for the water specialist, but since it seemed like there was a consensus, we just removed it from the options, and we're not going to. It doesn't look like the council wants to reduce that, so we just took it out. I can bring it back if you want to see it, but if you want to deliberate more.
Oh, no, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, any other questions? Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if no one else wants to ask this question, but if we want all of this, what has to give?
Let's see.
Did you hear that?
I mean, if that, it might be, it would be slated to come out of the various fund balances in the various funds. Or there might be other options as well if the council wants to kind of deliberate or float some ideas past each other.
Okay, I mean, I'll just make a brief comment that I was going to, I guess, work into tomorrow, but I remain very concerned with some of these funds, the degree of fund balance, unbudgeted, budgeted, unrestricted, restricted. We'll work through that nomenclature more tomorrow. In the end, I remain very concerned about some of that cash that we're burning through. We're not having any other discussions about, are there services we could reduce? Are there, no one wants to say it, are there positions that might need to change or be eliminated? Right now, we're just talking about the only option to fund any of this is with a reduction in fund balance. And so I would be hesitant to add some of these recurring expenses without an equally recurring revenue stream to match them. That just doesn't make any sense. So I don't know how my peers feel. And like I said, this is a lot to weigh in tonight on this agenda item, but that's where my line of thinking continues to go is trying to prioritize some of these options, if that's what we're calling them. Something's got to give somewhere, and I don't think just taking it from beginning fund balance is the answer, because that math just doesn't work long term. So I don't know how to reconcile that. I was curious if anyone else had any other thoughts.
I see Counselor Wessner has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking the same thing that Councilmember Servati said right off the bat is what it would take to get all of these options. And my concern is for adding personnel, adding salaries, wages, and benefits. Those are ongoing expenses that aren't just for these 2 years, most likely. I mean, they I don't want to eliminate positions. I don't want to have to lay off our employees, and I'm not comfortable adding an ongoing personnel with their salaries and wages if our revenue can't support it and we're just straight paying for it out of fund balance. If it can be demonstrated to me that we have a consistent revenue source to support a salary and a wage for a new employee, no matter how bad I would love to have a new park specialist and a new economic development specialist, I would need to see shown the ongoing revenue to support that. So that's sort of where I stand in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. We'll turn to Counselor Heisen.
Thank you. Real quick, because of the recently announced COVID restrictions, are we still doing an in-person meeting tomorrow?
Yes.
Or is that going to be we are?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that, yes, we plan to do it at council's request.
Okay, I thought the limit for gatherings was down to 5 people. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Counselor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, certainly, I echo Councilor Servatius and Councilor Wassinger's sentiments. We're heading into some pretty rough times, and I'm going to challenge all the department heads who are going to be at that meeting tomorrow to come with your thinking caps on, right? Help us help you get the positions you need and the things you need in the places you need it, right? But also help us figure out how we can justify it, right? Now, some of these I know we've talked about, and we'll get into more tomorrow, like, the engineering, it looks like there may be a significant savings. We all know that, we've been paying for some consulting engineers, that those amounts have added up. And I think we've kind of checked into that a little bit and agree that there could be that's a kind of a reorganization. And with that reorganization comes efficiency. And with that efficiency comes some cost reductions. So, some of those things, and I know we did have some departments come in and offer up some reductions. I don't know, Mr. Goldman, I'm sure you guys will have that available tomorrow during the department presentation. And for those departments who dug down deep and came up with a way to save costs, thanks, we appreciate it. Keep digging, and for the departments who maybe haven't, do what you can and come prepared tomorrow to help us figure out a way to make this preliminary budget work, understanding that we're all concerned about fund balances and the financial stability of the city moving forward. We're also all conscious of the fact that there are things in each of your departments that you can do to maybe efficientize them, and we don't want to hold you back from those efficiencies if they can result in some savings. Sometimes we've got to spend a little money to make that money back. So that's my challenge to department heads tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to those conversations, and I appreciate everybody's input.
Thank you, Counselor. We'll go now to Counselor Wassinger.
I was just gonna tell everyone that I'm gonna video in for tomorrow's workshop. So don't save me a seat in person. I'll video in. Just wanted to put that number for you out there.
Thank you, Counselor Wassinger. Counselor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we're on the subject, I also too will be video in tomorrow, so I will not show up in person. Just difficult hearing when I'm in the chambers there. So with that being said, I too am with Servadius and Wisner on this new employee status. I'm concerned about throwing that kind of money at an economic development coordinator as to what are they really going to do and how quickly are they going to be able to do something with everything that's going on. So I'm nervous. I would prefer to put funds elsewhere or look at other options. And the way I'm looking at a lot of this is this a need or is this a want? And so I'd love to have an economic development aid and get things up off the ground here with a lot of different things in the early springtime, but that not may be what's going to happen with everything. So again, I'm just concerned about adding more personnel and staff, and would prefer to put it in the necessity items versus a want item. So that'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Mack. Counselor Goebel.
Thank you, Mayor. I too echo the sentiment of Councilor Wassinger, Wiesner, and Servadius. I would love to have all of these new positions and projects done, but I am slightly reserved as well using the budgeted fund balance. I'm afraid we could be putting the city in a somewhat of a difficult position maybe 4 years down the line. I want to avoid that because we don't know, what the next year or 2 years will bring with the outfall of the pandemic. But I've done some thinking about the design engineering technician position, and this is more a question for the engineering department that maybe we can discuss tomorrow night. But I would like to know what projects they specifically think that person would be working on, because if we don't have any projects kind of in the pipeline, I think it's a great idea to try and cut those engineering consulting fees. But if we don't have any projects in the pipeline that they may be working on, I don't know if it's going to be of value to add that position, because like Councilor Wassinger was saying, once you add that, that's there and it's going to be there for a long time. And if we don't see revenues that are going to be able to support that long term, I'm just slightly hesitant. So I just wanted to make that opinion be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Goebel. Any other input? Okay. I think the staff was asked to potentially come with cost savings ideas by administration. So I think the council is, we guessed right that you're certainly going to expect that. So thank you. We'll see you tomorrow in that regard. We'll go back now to the consent agenda. So we have,
Just one
oops.
point of order, Mayor.
Okay.
We want to be sure your record reflects that the public hearing was closed, and then we can move on to the next item.
Okay. Seeing no other business, then we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Weed, on that. So then we'll go to the consent agenda, and we've got a couple of items on there. Unless somebody's got a question on those, they'll be approved as presented. Okay, seeing no question. Oops. Oh, Councilor Heisen. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted item, I'll make sure I have this right. 4B, the minutes, approval of minutes from the November 17th council meeting, just a correction or addendum to the minutes. Sorry, I'm trying to find what page I'm on. It looks like page 4 of the minutes. At the top of the page, it references Councilmember Munn's comments about the survey, and it says council members had discussed and created a survey. She did say we, but the council members did not discuss and create the survey. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear in the minutes. Thank you.
Okay. We'll have a look at that and make sure that's worded correctly. Okay. Then we'll move on to mayor comments. I want to advise the community that city facilities are closed Thursday, November 26th and Friday, November 27th in observance of Thanksgiving holiday. Garbage and recycling services scheduled for November 26th will be collected on November 27th. And at this time, I would like to read a personal statement to the Oak Harbor community regarding our city council's concerns about city employee morale. Dear Oak Harbor community, I was unable to attend the November 4th, 2020 City Council special meeting. I asked Mayor Pro Tem Munns to lead the meeting in my absence. My staff often prepares mayor comments for me to share information with City Council staff and the community at large during these meetings, but I want to be clear that the comments Mayor Pro Tem Munns read regarding an employee survey were not included in the comments staff provided because I was not aware of the survey and neither was my leadership team. At the City Council workshop on August 26, 2020, Washington State City's Insurance Authority provided a training session to City Council to remind them of their role in city government. The training was a refresher for most and often offered to educate our new council members and the community about council's role. The training explained it is the mayor's role to manage city staff, and the City Council's role is a legislative body with authority to determine city policy. In this training, council received an overview about staff morale and management being part of the mayor's role and not council because the mayor is the chief executive officer of the city. As the mayor of Oak Harbor, I think it is important to gather feedback from employees and the community. After receiving a request from Mayor Pro Tem Munns, Councilmember Servadius and Councilmember Mack, I have been working with city administration staff on a process to do so. Staff was holding off on sending out a survey now because our priorities for 2020, which include the continuation of our operations, addressing community and staff needs due to impacts and unprecedented situations and projects from COVID-19, finalizing the 21-22 budget to submit to City Council for approval, including potential impacts to city revenues because of the economic impacts of COVID-19 and restrictions on our community. Our priorities have also included recruiting and replacing Director of Development Services, Director of Finance, and Parks Operation Manager positions. Additionally, I did not want to increase employee workloads towards the end of the year or send out a communication that would conflict with other planned communications or surveys scheduled at this time of year from human resources or internal committees. I'm also concerned about staff timing and the cost to have the city attorney tabulate and report on the results of this survey. It is my goal to increase engagement and the way we receive feedback from staff and the community. In 2019, we initiated an annual all-hands meeting for staff, and in March 2020, we implemented and hired a public information officer. This new position is providing increased communication to employees and the public through electronic newsletters, city website, videos, and social media posts highlighting information about programs and services. We are receiving more feedback from staff. I also modified the service award process to include a meeting with me personally, providing an opportunity to chat one-on-one with each recipient so that I can learn what we're doing well and what we can improve for our city. Some of the actions we have planned for 2021 include employee surveys, employee focus groups, more engagement opportunities, and communication. These processes will start in 2021 for several reasons. But one key reason is giving our new leaders an opportunity to get settled before we ask employees about their performance. It is important to note that the new Development Services Director, David Cull, started in August. Our new Finance Director, David Goldman, who presented many things this evening, started last month in October, and our new Parks Operation Manager started just this month in November. It is unfair to solicit feedback from staff until some time has passed and these individuals settle in. I appreciate City Council's concerns and I am taking them seriously, but timing and coordination are important. I want to continue the process we are using and then report back to City Council and the community about what we are learning from staff. I also want to express how important it is to allow time to change for change to occur. All companies and agencies are dealing with employee concerns because of how challenging this year has been. Some employees have expressed their concerns about stress. I did not want to add to their stress during the holiday season by conducting an additional survey. As the mayor, I do not want to make things more difficult for our staff or their families. I am confident that we can work together to identify, address, and improve employee morale and engagement with staff and the community together. We currently offer many options for interactions at this time through a comment card box at City Hall, contact us form on the City of Oak Harbor website, email options for staff, the mayor and city council, our city main phone lines, meetings with the mayor or any of our leadership team. I hope that any employees or residents of the City of Oak Harbor who have concerns will utilize these options to reach out and engage with me, and I appreciate those of you who already have. I desire that we continue to make Oak Harbor a wonderful place in which to live and work. So at this time, I don't know whether Attorney Weed has anything to add. Grant, are you with us?
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment at this point would be that if council does include this issue in their discussions tonight, or at a later date for that matter, I'll be prepared to assist as needed and provide comment and answer questions. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes my comments, and we'll turn to City Council for council comments. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind people that Help House will start distributing Thanksgiving baskets this Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. Unfortunately, the need is rising slowly, but it is rising in town because of the adjustment people are having to make from our COVID restrictions. So anyway, if you have anything extra, even $1 would help. Please think of Help House, or if you have extra vegetables or things like that, think of those in need. Everyone needs to eat every day. So I'd appreciate any help towards that organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. Just a little bit of clarification. Tara, you brought it up at the workshop. I apologize, and apologize to any of my peers with regards to the survey. The wording may have said something about the council or members of the council. It could have said some members of the council. If you've seen, which you did get a copy of, it was myself and Ms. Munns that created the survey. I'm glad the mayor brought up the meeting he had with Mr. Mack, Pro Tem, and myself. It was during that meeting that we were instructed to go ahead and do a survey. And so, as you've all seen, I think it's a very professional survey. I wish we would have done it sooner. As we go through the budget cycle and we look at where we might need to direct dollars, might need to look at changes in policies, I think it's incredibly important. I don't think the survey even mentions the word morale. So I just thought it's very timely, and that's where the genesis of the survey came from. It sounds like there'll be more surveys coming, and I'm excited for that as well. But I apologize to my peers. Obviously, it couldn't have been a group effort. Well, it could have been with a whole bunch of scheduled public meetings because of the Open Public Meetings Act. We didn't want to violate that in any way. So Mayor Pro Tem and myself took it upon ourselves to put that together. Hopefully it'll give employees a chance to give, feedback freely. And then we can look at those results and figure out what changes need to be made from there. Thank you.
Okay, other, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that clarification, Councilor Servadius. There was a few who was a bit surprised, had no idea that was coming around the corner. So I appreciate that. I did just want to put out there for any of the staff that we have here tonight, or those that are listening, as a member of the legislative body, we do have ways for you to contact us. My personal cell phone number is on the city website, because quite frankly, if you type my name in, it'll come up anyhow. So feel free, to reach out to. I can certainly speak for me, and I think I speak for the rest of council. I think on an obvious basis on this one, I think it's a safe. We're here as your partners. We're here to work with you. You are valued employees and staff of the city, and we don't hear enough. I think we all work too, right? We have jobs, and so we don't make it obviously into your departments or into your buildings as often as we would like to. Something I'm personally gonna probably make for a New Year's resolution. But we do care, and feel free, email, call. We're here again as your partners, and we certainly want to hear what you folks have to say if there's a concern that you think needs to be addressed by us. Thank you.
Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to drift off a little bit, and I would like to express sincere gratitude and thanks for all of our first responders, Chief Merrill, Chief Dresker, in the power outage. It's reassuring with no power to go to sleep knowing that there's people out there protecting your life and family and your property. So great job, guys. You may have to do it a few more times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. Anyone else? Council comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to City Administrator. No comments tonight? Okay, then we'll move to our amended agenda item 5D. And I'm going to turn it back to Councilor Servadius.
As I mentioned when I made the motion, I don't know if there's anything more important that we could be doing as a body and as a city right now than reaching out to our small businesses with what came down Sunday, and I don't fault the mayor, or not the mayor, sorry, the governor. I understand, when my wife does public health for a living, it's very hard sometimes when these proclamations are made, or these, whatever you want to call this, a rollback. It's not a shutdown. It's going to take a while. It may take 3 to 4 weeks for us to see epidemiologically what happens and why this makes sense. At the same time, I think there's something that we could do and should be doing for small businesses. And that's why I wanted to rearrange the agenda. All of this stuff is important. It's time sensitive. Some of it is probably more time sensitive than others. There's dates we have to meet by statute. But I wanted to get a discussion going right now and to see how quickly we could react. And I don't remember the exact totals. I should have looked them up. We issued about a third of the COVID relief that we had available. That was my recollection. Please jump in and correct me, Mr. Oborn, if I'm mistaken. I would like to find out what we could do as a council and have this discussion right now to fast track some relief, specifically probably to the restaurants, probably those, I don't know if we could make it as specific, that those that do not have dine out or take out capabilities, that they could somehow be prioritized, because for the next 30 days, if you don't have takeout, those folks are shut down. And so, once again, I don't know if there's anything more pressing. And if we have excess COVID dollars, we as a city have a lot bigger pockets to get through this than some of these small businesses do. And I know that we've utilized some of those funds internally for some of our own COVID-related expenses. But my hope would be we could put our heads together here for the next 20, 30 minutes, whatever it takes to figure out how to fast track a package out to those businesses, specifically the ones most affected with the no dine in restrictions. That's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
So I see a couple of other council hands up. Before I call on them, I would like to suggest that I think Sabrina, our public information officer, is with us here tonight. She has been spearheading the CARES funding to date. I know that she's got rules that she has had to follow and deadlines that had to be met, and I probably will turn to her after we hear from the other counselors here, and then so I'm not going to put you on the spot immediately, Sabrina, but maybe in a few minutes you can chime in with what possibly could be done, or how the deadlines have affected us. So, but before we do that, we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I realize that there were hard set deadlines, but isn't there any way to contact the governor's office and say, hey, if we've got money left, can't we extend the deadlines? I mean, this is just too important to have, if we have resource money, to be able to extend. I know that we're not supposed to, everything was supposed to be in by a certain time, but I'm sorry, if the money is still sitting there, we're waiting for validation for claims, but isn't there some way to set in an urgent appeal first thing tomorrow morning and say, can't those deadlines be extended if you still had money that hadn't been used? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Wassinger.
Yes, I agree. I think some urgency on this to see what we can possibly do. I agree. I think restaurants / bars are going to be hit pretty hard here. Our fitness facilities in town are going to be closed back down again. Our bowling alley is supposed to be closed down again. I mean, I'm just off the top of my head that the movie theater, the indoor movie theater, the drive-in looks like it can still continue, and other retail maybe at 25%, it looks like, which is still something. But for those that are completely in a pickle here, that have to cease indoor services, I think that we need to be, like, right now asking what we can do, and figuring out. I think that should be a priority here in the next day or two, to see what we can possibly do. And I'd love to get an update on that. So I support that and would be willing to help if there's anything that I can do to help, help with an ask, like Mayor Pro Tem said, a request, anything at all, I'd be willing to sign off on. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wassinger. Councilor Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm too in agreement with other council members. As Councilman Servadius put it, these guys are shut down. They probably had freezers full of food. The invoice is coming due. You got to pay for that invoice. They can't get out of a lease, so they've got to pay this lease. So Mr. Oborn and our public information officer we need to get on the line tomorrow morning and let's see how we can help these businesses and see if we can't categorize those a little bit as the most in need, who shut down, and amortize it all out is who's the most need and on down the list. I'm okay. I'll survive. I'm at 25%. Thank God I don't have to shut down, but it's tough. And you got bills coming up this time of year. So there's got to be some way that we can get around this as a municipality. And if, as Mayor Pro Tem put it, if there's funds available, let's get them out there to the public. This is what we're here for. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I couldn't agree more, and I'm going to offer up a couple of suggestions here that maybe we can discuss a little bit. I think the city, I'm certainly willing to support some city staff time, which means city money, involved in spearheading an effort to work with the chamber, work with Main Street to start getting the information from the local businesses that are affected. I think if we're going to go to the state with our hand out, we got to have a little bit of facts, a little bit of information. We got to be looking at what kind of money we're looking at. And I think, between the CARES grant process that we had before and the use of the Survey Monkey to gather up some of that initial information between the chamber and Main Street, getting the information out, we could be reaching out to these businesses, asking them how they're affected, what kind of money they're going to need to be able to get through this next 30 days, what kind of costs they had incurred. And that could be the basis to start figuring out where money can come from, how much we need, what the need really is. Obviously, again, there'll be some city staff time and money put into that, but I think that the city owes it to our small business community to do that reach out and spearhead the organization of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. Councilor Goebel.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, like everyone else has said, and I'm sure everyone in this whole room agrees that we need to do whatever we can to support those local businesses because those employ people who live in Oak Harbor, families of children. I just have a question for Sabrina, maybe City Administrator Oborn. When the CARES Act applications they had their hard deadline, have you had any businesses reach out to you after that deadline trying to ask, hey, is there still any opportunities for relief or whatnot? Have people expressed some kind of interest in this kind of in-between time?
Yes, but the short and simple answer is yes.
Yeah.
There have been some of those requests. Due to this process that we had in place, we could not assist those people, but we did have other systems that we had started, like the PPE program and things like that, to try to assist them. I will say, I know Councilmember Wiesner still has his hand up, but I will say that one of the biggest challenges that we have with the CARES dollars is the requirements, not just the deadlines, but the requirements that these businesses have to comply with to show us evidence of what they've done. And in order to not put the city in danger, what we had to really do was comply with these documentation requirements, which a lot of these businesses struggled with, which is where Jay has been doing a lot of just really assisting the people through that process. And so I would say that has been the biggest challenge for everybody. So in identifying a system of what we could do to help, there's the processes we have internally with council to approve, changing those funds over. There's also the systems that we would need to create to identify these people and assist them and get the documentation to do that. Because it's one thing when we're doing something like the PPE where we're just issuing them the supplies that they need and we can identify that as an obvious thing. It's another thing entirely when it's rent or something like that where we have to have all of the backup documentation to meet in order to comply with the federal requirements. And it's not so much the state as it is the federal requirements that we've been having to comply with. The other thing is that as a county, we all agreed that we would have a cap of $10,000. So some of these businesses applied for $10,000 and didn't use all of it. Some of them used all of it. It just depends on the situation. So I hope that answers some of the questions. I'm more than happy to work on some creative ideas. I think those of you who have worked with me know that. I'm more than happy to try to see what we can do, but there are some limitations in the way that the program works that we're trying to make sure we don't put the city in trouble with or at risk with in the way we set up the program.
Yeah, when you answered, I was going to ask you next was what's the biggest challenge with these dollars? Because any government dollar, there's all sorts of different regulations and standards and expectations. So thank you for sharing that information. If you need any help at all, I am more than happy to help you be creative with marketing and trying to get a message out of how to help people start that bureaucratic process and get it done. And yeah, so thank you very much, Sabrina. I appreciate all your work.
Yeah, sure thing. I will say it sounds like one of the key things we could do is do a targeted survey, get with the chamber, get with Main Street, and do these questions of how, I think the top questions I heard so far is how are you impacted? What kind of needs do you have? The added piece to that I would have is the documentation they have with that because of those requirements. One of the things I thought about earlier today is things as simple as printing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you're doing takeout menus and you're trying to get those out to the community, there's printing and advertising and promoting what everybody's doing. And I know Chamber and the Main Street did an excellent job last time of getting the word out about what was available to people. But whatever other creative ideas anybody has, I'm more than open to. We just have to make sure they can answer those 4 questions. And that's where it gets a little dicey.
Mr. Oborn, did you have something?
To kind of add to this in the discussion here, the CARES money expires at the end of the month. So whatever we don't spend, unfortunately, gets left on the table. There's been some hope that the federal government would extend the CARES money and then the state government would reciprocate and allow additional spending on it. I do want to note that when we talked about this discussion that the city of Sequim offered up early on their own $200,000 for a grant that started before the CARES funding. Certainly the council has the option of using reserve funding. And also when these new orders came out, the governor did notate that he was setting aside additional funding to help businesses affected by the closure. So those are certainly the governor's options going on. And if the council wants to tap the reserve and run a city program, that's certainly the discretion of the council.
So I'll follow up to say that I had a citizen contact me last week, and he's having a problem. His wife actually lives in Canada, so I sent a letter to the governor, and his aide called me on Sunday morning. So they were very responsive. I'd be happy to send a letter tomorrow morning to the governor, telling him about this concern and about this conversation, and tell them that we know there is a need. We can establish more about that need in the next few days. But I'd be happy to do that as an immediate contact to tell him about your concern, if that's what you'd like.
The other thing I just want to add, Mayor, is that I will say that we have staff who has been really dedicated to trying to assist these small businesses. So not only do we have the finance and program assistant staff, but we have people like Sandra Place, who has been doing her utmost to order supplies. And there are supplies out there that some of these businesses couldn't get, like medical gowns and sports tape, things that we didn't even know that businesses needed, but thanks to the chamber, we found out about some of the needs that were out there. And we were able to, Sandra was able to procure those items and we're able to get them out to them. So we're trying to work within those parameters. So like I said, any ideas we're open to.
Councillor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would certainly support and sign off on that letter and do anything I could to assist you there. And you know, I certainly support Sabrina and you know, moving forward with data gathering, right? I think that's going to be the next thing to understand. What is the need? You know, a perfect example, like you said, Sabrina, you know, helping with simple things like gowns and printing and things like that, understanding those needs. If we don't understand them, we can't help, right? So I think that's a fantastic two-pronged approach, getting started with the governor to let him know that we feel there's a need and that we're going to be reaching out to establish more information. Obviously try to be, you know, one of the first cities in fighting for our constituents and you know, maybe if we get his ear early on, we have the opportunity to you know, help out some of these businesses. But the need, the establishment of the need and understanding what it is we can do to help these folks, I think is a paramount issue that we've got to get going on.
Thank you, Councillor Wiesner. Councillor Mack?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And yes, Mayor Severance, I think that would be the real prudent thing to do. I appreciate you putting that offer out there. And there's nothing like the governor hearing from a distinguished mayor of an outstanding city. So let's make that happen. And I, like Councilman Wiesner said, let's be the first out there and let's get Governor Inslee's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll certainly do that. Any other discussion or questions about that at this point? Okay, thank you, Councillor Servadius, for getting that conversation started. Okay, we will then, I guess, move on to, I think, item number 7A. If I've got my agenda right, we're going to come back to 6A, B, C, and D after 9A. So we'll go to item number 7A at this time, which is ordinance number 1911, 1911, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Code section 17.05.030, permit fees. David Cool, are you with us here?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Severance and members of council. Tonight, we would like to consider ordinance 1911. And what that would do for us is allow us to collect the plan check fee that we normally charge applicants for building permits at the counter. It would allow us to charge that particular plan check fee later on in the process. Currently in our rules, we are required to collect the plan check fee at application. Right now, we have problems, though, with applicants might come in with 5 or 6 applications at a time. And with limited staff, we don't have the time to calculate the plan check fee for each particular permit while the applicant is standing here. We think it's probably better customer service to take the application in and then calculate the plan check fee and collect it later on in the process. So the language we've come up with would allow us to collect the plan check fee later, up to 180 days after we actually take the application in. This also establishes the fact that a permit will not be issued until the plan check fee is paid. So basically someone can come in, they can apply for a building permit, we'll process their paperwork and then contact them later on with what the plan check fee is. If you're not familiar with it, a plan check fee is where we review the plans that applicants submit, make sure that it meets the code, and that plan check fee is always established by the building code. The building code requires 65% of the actual permit fee to be charged for a plan check fee. So as you can see, typically it's not done usually until the end of the process when we know what the actual permit fee is. But this new language allows us to collect the fee later, and it helps to make sure that if someone comes in and submits a big application for a large permit, and then they don't pay, this requires them to pay it within 180 days. If they don't, then their application would become null and void. And this way, this covers us at both ends of the process. This is language that we established with our attorneys, Mr. Weed and Anna Thompson, as well as Scott King, our building official, and Cody West, our plans examiner. So we all had a hand in this, and we think this will help us to define exactly what we should and should not be doing in terms of collecting plan check fees. So we're available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cool. Julie, just wanted to verify that we haven't had any kind of input regarding this subject from the public.
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay.
No comments from the
Okay,
public.
we'll turn to council for questions or input or motions. Councilor Servadius.
Mr. Cool, I'll just say thank you, precise, concise, very much appreciated. And I think it's, a very good step in the right direction as far as customer service and efficiency, as well as making sure that the city gets reimbursed for any work they might do, where they don't just get left with a bill that doesn't get paid for ad infinitum. So thank you, all support it.
Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. If there are no other comments, I move to adopt ordinance number 1911.
I'll
Second,
second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. I think, I know the motion was Councilor Heisen. I think the first second was Councilor Servadius. So we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 1911. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor, raise your hands. That passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cool, for that item. We will move now on to item number 8A, hearing examiner contract. And I'm not sure who's got this one. Is this, okay, this is also David. Mr. Cool?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight, CAC will be handling this particular project. We've been working with Mr. Weed and Ms. Thompson, and have spent some time to figure out how to take care of a hearing examiner contract for you. And so CAC is on standby, ready to present this item.
Thanks, David. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm hoping that you can hear me well. I am going to share my screen for a short presentation. So if you will bear with me. There you go. I hope you can see that. So just wanted to go over a quick history of our hearing examiner services that we've had over the past few years. It was provided by Mr. Michael Bobbink. Mr. Bobbink was serving the city since 2004 till November 2020. The contract was extended over time. It changed and evolved, but the most recent contract had approximately $20,000 budgeted per year, and the hearing examiner was paid on a monthly basis, somewhat like a retainer fee, and the fee was consistent no matter how many cases came forward. I think during the last couple of years, I think there was interest expressed in going a different direction in terms of services and how we contract. So we went through a RFP process. We initiated that in September. We used the MRSC small roster as a way to reach out to hearing examiner firms. About 9 offices are listed on their roster. and we sent requests for proposals to all of them. We received 2 proposals. Both proposals met the qualifications. We reviewed them as per the criteria that's listed on the RFP and have forwarded the recommendation to you. The contract in front of you is recommended for Sound Law Center. Sound Law Center is a hearing examiner firm that serves the surrounding areas and is very familiar with the region. They provide services for Island County. They provide services for Cookeville, Langley, and Cordes. So anybody that works in this region will be familiar with sound law services by working in other jurisdictions if they do so. They also have 3 hearing examiners in their office, and so that's a wide variety of hearing examiners that will be available to take on hearings with the city. They have several options for fees, ranging from a standard fee in terms of the type of hearing, to hourly rates, or to a tiered approach. Currently, the contract is set up for hourly rate, and that is just primarily a starting point. Internally, staff felt that that's a good way to start the contract, to see how we progress, what type of cases we have, what type of expenditures we do, and we can then amend the contract if we think that a different approach is better. But an hourly rate will engage the hearing examiner services when we need them on a need-to basis. There's no retainer fee, so we're not spending money if we're not using their services. And we feel that the hourly rate is a good way to begin the process. So with that, I will turn to the City Council for any questions. We do recommend that you authorize the mayor to enter into this contract and with Sound Law Center. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you, CAC. Julie, I assume we have no input from the public regarding this item?
That's correct, Mayor. No input from the public.
Thank you. We will then turn to council for questions. I see Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Kat, one of the disappointments I had with Mr. Bobick is when Lehigh came, and there were some very professional people that submitted information to him, and he said nothing about it. When you have an attorney that goes through code saying, this is it, but blah, blah, and giving examples, and then you have an FAIA architect who also chimes in, who's very, one of his expertise is public housing, and he has nothing to say. Will this company give us something? I mean, so that whoever is being examined or counsel, if we have questions, can see why or why not he ruled a certain way. I mean, will he give some answers? Because I was just shocked, especially after talking to City Administrator Oberg, saying, well, yes, if he's worth his salt, he will write some answers. Yes, this is true, but blah, 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 and we got nothing. And so I'm just concerned. It sounds like they're really good. I like the hourly, but flexible, that they have 3 on staff that could easily fit in. But are they going to give us information when we truly do need it back? Thank you.
Yeah, very good question. We reviewed the material that they submitted to us as part of the packet. We did ask them to submit to us some decisions that they made so that we can look at all the written material, how they organize their material, and how easy it is for staff or any members of the public to read the material. So we looked at all of that, and we feel like Sound Law Center does a very good job of documenting all the citizen comments, all the documents that they receive at their hearing, They seem to be very systematic in terms of how they receive information and how they deal with it, and they're very professional about it. So we feel confident that they'll do a good job in that aspect.
Thank you very much. I felt that just besides council members, that staff was kind of at a loss too on some of the stuff. So thank you for checking that out. I appreciate it very much.
Counselor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was just going to comment, this is exactly what we'd asked staff to do. You know, we've averaged just over 3 uses of the hearing examiner per year for the last 6 years. And obviously we're paying a premium for having a single party on retainer for that low number of cases. And you know, we were stuck with one individual, right? And so we'd asked staff to seek out somebody where we had a rotating body and you know, we had a little bit more availability. So I appreciate staff researching this and doing exactly what we asked. This is going to provide, I think, better service to the community. And I think this in the end is going to be a cost savings for the community, which is a win-win. And I was going to make the motion, but I see Mr. Servadius has questions, so I'll yield to him.
Thank you, Counselor Wiesner. Counselor Servadius?
Thank you, Mr. Wiesner. I concur with your good, concise statement. The only question I have is we've got an hourly rate here, and we talk about appropriating, I'm assuming it's up to $20,000, but there's not a not to exceed amount. I'm assuming if we got into any kind of a land use case that was gobbling up lots of hours, we would hear about it. Mr. Kamak or maybe Mr. Goldman, Mr. Oborn, I'm not sure who wants to field that. How do we know that this, you know, and two, thank you, staff. This is what we asked for, and I think this, you know, time will tell, but it'll probably be a good fit for us economically. But how do we know, put me at ease with a not to exceed amount? Who wants to answer that question?
I'll ask a clarifying question. Are we talking about just per case or just the total budget for the hearing examiner?
Good point. I would say we've got an annual contract, a one-year contract. So when I see financial impact, like you guys always put in an agenda bill, it says $20,000. Is that we're earmarking in the general fund $20,000 for a one-year contract up to?
I believe that's what we have included in our budget to accommodate the hearing examiner services. And David, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Well, yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Okay, so I will support this without any amendment of the language with a not to exceed amount. If for some reason we obviously found ourselves in a situation where either they're getting used to us and our code, or we're getting used to them and those hours start to pile up, please, Mr. Goldman, Mr. Cool, whoever would be in charge of supervising this, please keep us apprised of that situation. Thank you. Take it away, Mr. Wiesner.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Servadius. Barring no other questions or comments from the rest of the council, getting back to my page here, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with the Sound Law Center LLC for hearing examiner services.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and second that reads exactly like the recommended action in the packet. Motion by Councilor Wiesner, second by Councilor Wassinger. All in favor, raise your hands. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, council, and thank you, staff. We'll move on to item number 9A, which is the WCIA property rate deductible options. And I see we have our finance director, David Goldman, back. David?
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, this presentation will be about the property rate insurance options. See if everybody can see that. So there's a lot of numbers in the backup. There's a lot of numbers here too, but there's only, it's a lot less than what's in the backup. I tried to summarize everything to kind of make things a little bit clearer. So for the insurance renewal, insurance renewal for 2021, Currently, with a $5,000 deductible, looking at all the properties in the city, the annual premium will be about $300,000. If a $25,000 deductible is, explored, the annual premium will go down to $224,000, and then going up to the $50,000 deductible, the annual premium would go down to $197,000. Without the clean water facility, looking at all the other city properties except for the brand new clean water facility, the premiums are about $92,500 with the current deductible, go down to $68,000 with $25,000 deductible, and about $60,000 with the $50,000 deductible. City staff is working with brokers. We've already made contact with brokers, and we're looking to get some quotes hopefully next week regarding the clean water facility. So, that's in process. Now, there's no claim history with the clean water facility. It's a brand new building. So what we did is we did our remaining calculations based on, all the other properties in the city. So using the 16-year claim history that's in your backup for the remainder of the city facilities yields a total incurred average annual claim. Like we took every claim that happened in the year. Sometimes there was 2 claims, sometimes there was 0 claims. We just looked at what those claims were and looked at the average over the 16 years from 2005 to 2020, and we got about $58,000. Now, with the $5,000 per claim deductible, the average annual payout is about $4,000. With a $25,000 deductible, if that was in place during all those 16 years, the average annual payout would have been $15,000. And if a $50,000 deductible were in place during all those 16 years, the average annual payout would have been $24,600. So then we looked at the average annual premium, the difference between going from 5,000 to 25 and 5,000 to 50, assuming that we go back 16 years and we assumed a 3% discount rate. We assume we wouldn't have the same amount of savings as this year. It would be reduced a little bit every year, assuming that premiums would be a little bit less, a little bit less every year. And using that discount rate, the average annual premium savings going to $25,000 from our current $5,000 would be about $19,400 per year, and going to $50,000 would be $26,000 per year. And the average annual increase in claim costs going from our current $5,000 deductible to $25,000 per claim deductible annualized on the average is about $11,400, and going to $50,000 is $20,800. So just taking the savings from the top area, let me use my mouse, taking the savings here and subtracting out the increased cost would yield a savings of $8,000 on the average, going to $25,000. And then also taking this savings, estimated savings of 26, subtracting it out by the increased claim cost, you get a savings going of less, actually, of $5,400 going to $50,000. So based on that, we provided some options. In green is the staff's, staff's recommended option, going to $25,000 for the non-clean water facility properties, and then taking a look at these broker quotes that hopefully will be coming in next week to see if those rates will be less. To see if those rates would be a little bit less than, what we get from the pool. The other options are on the screen too. We can just stay at $5,000. We could stay at $5,000 for the non-clean water facility, and then get the broker quotes, to see what the broker quotes show. The premium cost would be a lot less, but of course we'd have to add in whatever whatever we find for the quotes. And this, the same kind of setup for option 2, going to 25. And doing that, using the pool for all the properties, or doing the recommended one, which is to look at those quotes that come in next week, and then option 3 would go to 50,000. So, that's what we came up with for options, and staff's available to field any questions you might have.
Julie, no questions from public?
That's correct, Mayor. No questions from the public.
Okay, then we'll turn to council for questions. And I'm not seeing, okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Who is our broker pool from? What's the name of the of that pool that we are using currently now for that insurance, please?
I think it's WCIA, the Washington Cities Insurance Authority.
Yes.
Okay. And they're still adamant that they will not let us separate and have two policies.
Yeah.
One clean water.
Yeah, that's what they said. I mean, we could break out clean water and shop on our own, but they won't give us two separate policies for whatever reason.
Okay, and if we can't find a reasonable, another company to do the clean water, then they would also be in the same $25,000 deductible, correct?
Well, if that's the will of the council, it would be this. Yeah, it would be in the same $25,000 deductible, or $5,000 or $50,000, depending on, the decision of the council.
Okay, well, just looking at your numbers, it looks like it would be more advantageous to do the $25,000 deductible. But if we vote on it tonight and we can't find someone else, then do we have to have a revote to add the clean water facility also to this policy? I don't quite understand that, how we can vote on it tonight without knowing about the clean water facility, where we might get insurance from if it's not WCIA.
David,
Yeah,
you
I
want me
mean-
to help you with
Well,
the
go
answer?
ahead, Blaine, take it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and help you with the answer. So you are correct. We can't have two deductibles with WCIA, but certainly we do not have to participate in WCIA. We can pull all our property out. We can pull part of our property out. The thought here was to do the quotes, and we're going through Standard Place that does the procurement, and she's securing a broker through a quote system because everything has to be somewhat of a objective issue. Unfortunately, we did not have quotes to submit tonight. The thinking here is if you give the council direction to go with the 25,000, then you are correct. If we can't get quotes, or if the quotes don't come in competitively enough, then we turn around and leave the clean water facility in there. I don't know exactly when the hard deadline is before renewal, when we have to make a decision whether for WCIA, if the clean water facility has to be in or without. But if that deadline passes before we can bring it back to council, then we'll leave it in and just deal with it next year where we'll have more time. But certainly, if we can put it off to this December 1st meeting, then the idea would be to come back and entertain some quote options for the clean water facility, getting quotes on that. And we already went through a questionnaire with the broker that Sandra Place is using, and she was able to answer about 10 of the 25 questions. So we're gonna work on those additional questions, and hopefully we'll have some quotes by the December 1st. If the WCIA says that the period's already passed for us, then we'll go ahead and revisit this next year.
Okay, so we can wait and not technically vote on the recommended action until our December 1st meeting is what you're saying?
No, what I recommend is on the deductible, you make that tonight. The 25,000 is what we're recommending staff going. I mean, certainly you can stay at the 5. I'm a lower deductible fan, but the numbers kind of support the 25. They don't really support the 50. So we're looking for direction from the council, because probably within the next couple of days, I'll get an email as the delegate for the city asking me if we want to change the deductibles, and by knowing that ahead of time, I can already give that direction.
Okay, I guess just from my opinion and looking at the numbers, we would be wise to raise the deductible to 25,000, but that's just how I'm seeing it. I'm willing to listen to any other comments from anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Servadius.
Mr. Goldman, thank you. This is a very thorough agenda bill and lots of backup data there. And yeah, to steal Mr. Wiesner's quote, it appears, or staff did exactly what we asked. You made a thorough comparison between the two, and it appears that the $25,000 deductible makes sense. A question, and it's the same thing Ms. Munns just asked, just in a different way. I don't know if like traditional individual property and casualty insurance or your automobile policy, for example, you can change that throughout the year, add something, change the deductible, add a child, deduct a person. I don't know if we have that kind of flexibility here. So I too would wonder, what is the drop dead date? If we have the ability to make changes, then, you know, I feel comfortable approving the $25,000 deductible tonight. And then if we get competitive quotes from an outside brokerage to split off the clean water facility, maybe we pursue that, assuming we can notify them and change it. If not, we may have to wait a year. But I would just ask if we could hold off as long as possible until we have that other piece of data. That might make a big difference, or it may not. The private brokerages or the outside brokerages may be more expensive than what WCIA can do as a large pool. So that would just be my 2 cents there. So I guess I would feel comfortable approving it as long as we continue to put in a little bit of the hard work and see if we can be more competitive on the outside for the clean water facility. If we don't know that answer or we don't have that timeline, then go ahead and push it through. But if you can wait, please do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. Councilor Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I can support a $25,000 deductible. It's always a good way to go. Higher deductibles, less premiums. It instills a little confidence in the carrier. But at the same time, I'm not sure the deadline dates. Let's look at those. But we're getting quotes. They already want to know up ahead what's your idea of a deductible. So I can support the $25,000 deductible for savings, but at the same time, let's leave our options open on the CWF. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Oborn, have we looked at the opposite direction here, leaving the CWF with Washington cities? Will they? Is it an all or nothing? Do they insure everything the city's got or nothing, or can we have the CWF stay with them and be looking for outside sources for the other insurance?
Our primary insurance with them is liability. An option, property insurance is an option. We can pull all our property out of the property insurance. We can pull part of it out of the property insurance. Given the time frame, doing it for 150 properties for a quote in this short a time would probably be very difficult. Doing it for one property on the clean water facility might do that. And unfortunately, I could not get a drop dead date from WCI when we have to make the decision on the deductible or how long we can kind of hold up the decision on the clean water facility. I certainly will push it as far as we can. And I'm hoping we can push it to the December 1st, but if we have to make the decision to move forward, I would recommend we do the $25,000, we revisit it. And certainly next year, with more time, we can turn around and get a quote and price this out with the rest of the property or part of the property for insurance. So that's certainly an option.
Thank you for that, Mr. Oborn. And yes, thanks, Mr. Goldman. Very well presented. We had asked for some history, obviously taking us back 16 years gives us a big picture. And the big picture here is, and obviously timeline is going to drive this, but the big picture here is the significant savings is made with the $25,000 deductible for the clean water facility. That ends up with, being a $80,000 savings. We'd have to have 3 events there, exceeding $25,000 on an annual basis for us to have that be a negative. So that becomes a little bit of a no-brainer. The smaller differential is in all the other non-CWF properties, right? I mean, by going from the $5,000 to $25,000 spread, it's about a $20,000 savings. And if you take in normal annualized claims, it makes it about a $8,000 savings. So all we would have to do is have one additional claim that is in excess of $25,000 above and beyond what we would have on a normal annualized basis, and it would take us 2.5 years to recoup the savings, right? So the big savings is in having that clean water facility be at that $25,000 deductible, and ideally having all the non-CWF stuff at the $5,000, which I know is exactly what staff tried to do with the Washington State insurance pool. But I'm going to certainly suggest, obviously we're stuck on time. If we're to drop dead date, obviously it appears based upon averages and theories and looking at a 16-year pattern that it would be a safe change to a $25,000 deductible. It would save the city money unless we had a huge anomaly year. But it looks like the safest bet is that $25,000 on the clean water facility, and then a $5,000 deductible on all the other properties the city has. Looks like that would be the best bet for us. And if we could facilitate that either now or next year by leaving one with one agency and switching the other over to another, that would be the ideal situation. I think we would probably find an easier time ensuring the clean water facility. I think what the outcome is going to be is we're going to have an easier time ensuring that clean water facility through the Washington State insurance pool. We might have a little easier time finding an agent to take on the rest of the package, but I understand the timing and all the properties involved in order to get that quote. So I guess my guidance is as a stopgap, let's maybe save the city some money this first year with that $25,000 deductible. It seems to be the logical pattern. Seems like something really weird would have to happen for that to become a loser for us. But I would like to see us continue to work towards those two deductibles. I think that's the ultimate win for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. So, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt the recommended action as presented.
Second.
So we've got a motion and a second to adopt the $25,000 deductible as the recommended action reads in your packet. A motion by Councilor Heisen, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munz. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor, raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. Good discussion, good input, and we still got some homework to do, so that's good. We will now move to our section on public hearings, or back to item number 6A, and we'll start that item number 6A is ordinance number 1909, adding definitions to Oak Harbor Municipal Code Chapter 19.08 and amending 19.08115 building height. And we've got our Development Services Director, David Kuhl. Again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Tonight, Ray Lindberg is here with us. He is the project manager for all three ordinances found in items A, C, and D. And so he's been working on these issues for about a year now. And this is what long-range planning does. Eventually you get to the council, finally by the end of the year. So we're excited to get these items in front of you so we can move them forward. And so Ray, go ahead and take over.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the City Council, if you can hear me okay. I'm going to share my screen here and do a quick presentation. I'm not going to take too much time to discuss this, as we've discussed most of these many times before. But let me throw this up on the screen for you real quick here. Go start the presentation. And of course, now it's not going to work for me. Hold on just a minute. There we go. Okay, so this is ordinance 1909. As Mr. Cool mentioned, we have 3 ordinances to look at tonight, so I'm going to start with the first one on the agenda there. This one has to do with the 2 definitions sections that we talked about previously, some supporting changes to the CBD zone district changes, and then also clarifying the practice of measuring building height. And so those are the code amendments that are going to deal specifically with Chapter 1908 of the Municipal Code. For our new definitions, we have a handful of new definitions that are supporting the CBD code change. Active facade is a new code or a new definition to give kind of definition or description of what it is we're looking for on the Pioneer Way frontage there to make sure that we're getting pedestrian-oriented, pedestrian-friendly development along there. You'll see the active facade terminology come up in a couple places in the code amendment that we'll be discussing here in a few minutes. But this is actually giving that a definition. And then for bar, tavern, or cocktail lounge, those uses were referenced in the code but never defined, so we wanted to put that in there so we know what it is we're talking about. Same thing with conference center, that was referred to in the code and never defined in the code. Retail sales, minor and major are a new concept, and these are going to help define what type of retail stores you might see on Pioneer Way versus out on the highway. They are limited to the square footage of their floor areas. And so you will see the minor retail sales on the
Ray, we're not seeing your slides.
actual Pioneer Way frontage, and then the major ones on the highway area.
Ray, are you meaning to
Yeah.
do, we're not seeing your slides change?
Yeah, I just realized that. I will scroll through them. I apologize. I'm reading them, but they're not there. So we get to retail sales, minor. These are the previous ones. Those are included in your packet, of course, with the new code information. So just kind of scrolling back through those. And then the last one we have for the CBD related definitions are the retail service, and that's a major and minor situation again. And this kind of goes to defining the characteristics of, say, a beauty salon versus a bank with a drive-through teller. And then one of the concepts that we kind of developed from a previous meeting with the City Council is a retail workshop, which allows for your kind of small woodworking businesses, jewelers, et cetera, that create their own product on site. And then we kind of limited that to 4,000 square feet, so we don't have a full-on industrial type use that might show up on Pioneer Way or in an area that might not be quite appropriate for that. So this is more of your small workshop, your maker kind of uses there. And then finally, we talked about building height previously. This code change was kind of precipitated by the fact that our building heights were previously measured from the property corners rather than the building corners, which was kind of an unusual way of doing it. It also created situations where developers were having to kind of manipulate property boundary lines to allow them to construct a building that is perfectly reasonable for the site, but doesn't work because of the way we're measuring the building height. So we just changed that to talk about the building corners rather than the property corners. So that is the extent of the 1909 ordinance. And so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Julie, any input?
No, Mayor, we received no input from the public.
Thank you. Okay. We'll take it to council then at this time for input, questions. Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. Ray, a couple of questions on the building height. Not that I'm building a house anytime soon, but if I recall, it was something like 33 feet from the average of the four corners. And now it's, tell me again what the change has been.
The change is, it used to be from the highest and lowest corners of the property, and now it's the highest and lowest corners of the house or the building. And it's 35 feet in the case of an R1 district.
Okay, 35 feet. So it's interesting. So now, depending on the lot, that can shift around wherever on the lot, depending on what's most favorable to build.
Well, I mean, you're still subject to setbacks. So it's not like you could move it, directly into a corner. In practice, we don't anticipate it's going to cause a significant change in building heights.
Okay. And the only other question I would have, you mentioned in here in the first part of the agenda bill, the input and working with Main Street. Do you know, has this been run by them in its final version in any official capacity?
They are on our mailing list for all the notices and everything, so they get the same information that you get. So in that official capacity, yes.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, well done. I mean,
Thank you.
a year may seem like a lifetime, but I know, having spent 7 years or so on the Planning Commission, that things can get really picky. And it's nice to see some clarity, and hopefully, I guess we'll find out when we put them into action if they might unfortunately needed to be tweaked again. But thank you very much for all of that. Appreciate that time and effort, and your uniqueness in doing it too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, I have just one concern, not quite sure how to address it. If you could put those one of those slides back up there that talked about retail service for like woodworking down there. Sort of the...
Is that the one?
Okay, so that one, thank you. Great job on everything. I mean, yes, we covered everything, and everything sounds terrific. My biggest issue with this is any production of goods on site must not create noise, odors, dust, or other environmental impacts beyond the building. So tell me what would happen if we've got a first-class chainsaw artist there, and he wants to go out back and make sawdust and carve really cool stuff so we can put it in his display floor. And he's outside, and he makes sawdust. They do make a lot of sawdust. So how does something with this new code, how do you address something like that? Do you go back to, and the only thing I could think of is you go back to the other ordinances that we have on the books where you can't show up on somebody's property and fire up all the power tools at 6 a.m. where you can only run it till a certain hour at night. I don't know the exact hours there. So that line in there, I'm just kind of concerned if we do have someone who wants to, same thing with an iron worker. If they want to make a steel sculpture and he's got to go outside and grind, he can't do that inside. So how do you get around something like that?
I guess the question is, do you want to, first of all? But in answering your question, there are a couple of things that are kind of a backup to this sentence. And one of them is our noise ordinance that you referenced, not being able to create undue nuisance to neighbors falls under our noise code. And then also outdoor activities when related to a business generally requires a conditional use permit. And so I think that those two things kind of cover that from the standpoint of if you did have a business that wanted to do something along those lines. To be perfectly honest, to me, that sounds like both of those examples you used, the chainsaw artist and the blacksmith, kind of sound like they should be more in an industrial zone. Although, there are certainly exceptions to that. And if we had a situation where that came up, it was previously mentioned that we might end up tweaking things, and that might be the case. This is kind of a new concept, a new idea. A lot of what we do as planners are kind of copied and pasted from other places. This definitely was not. The retail workshop definition, is a brand new thing as far as I know. So it might need to be tweaked. If we get to that, we might have to cross that bridge. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. I just, and I agree with you with the industrial zone. So some of these things, they could possibly have another construction site, off-site, and they could have a display place downtown, that type of thing. So, yeah, jewelers don't make that kind of noise and that kind of mess. So thank you very much, Ray. And yes, a lot of effort went forward and it looks great.
Thank you.
Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Ray, great job. And you know, these are the tools that we want as your city council to give staff, right? You guys are the ones that are in the trenches. You guys know where the confusions come. And the reality is, for business people, for developers, lack of conciseness is an enemy, right? I mean, and I know it puts you guys in difficult positions when you have somebody down there asking you a question and we have a code that is unclear, and it puts you in a position where you're not able to give the clear, concise, professional answer that I know you like to give, right? So kudos, keep them coming. You know what we can do to help you guys be able to do your job and be able to give clear and concise information on a daily basis. You know, we're here for you, and you know, certainly you're the ones in the trenches, and continue bringing these forward as you see them. I personally know of at least 2 of the items, you know, and 2 of the projects that these concerned, and I know that caused quite a bit of difficulty and quite a bit of work for staff, quite frankly, to work through one of them to come up with solutions until we could get this code change put into place. And the reality is it created a lot of work, a lot of expense, and a lot of effort on everybody's part. And so this one little clarification is going to prevent that. And we're, you know, I'm personally happy to provide you the tools you need to be able to continue doing an excellent job for us, Ray. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Great input. How about a motion?
Yeah, if barring any other questions, Mayor, I'll make the motion.
Perfect.
I move to adopt ordinance number 1909, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Code, section 19.08 definition.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action in the packet. Motion by Councilor Wiesner, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to go to item number 6B, which is the public hearing surplus list. And we have Kathy Rosen, our Public Works Director. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. What you have before you tonight is a list of surplus items from our utility funds. RCW 3594040 requires that the council hold a public hearing prior to surplusing any city property that was acquired using utility funds. Staff is proposing to remove these items from our inventory, and we will dispose of them properly through some sort of a bidding site, either the state bidding site or a site called Bidadoo. At this time, we're recommending that you receive any public comments and consider those, and then adopt resolution 20-33 declaring certain city property of the water, solid waste, storm drain, and or sewer utility to be surplus property. And I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Turn to our city clerk. Did we receive any comments for this hearing?
No, Mayor, we received no comments for this public hearing this evening.
Okay, received no comments. And so the public hearing is closed. And we will turn back to council for a motion. Councilor Wiesner, a question or a motion, whatever?
Yes, barring any comments, Mayor, I'd like to move to adopt resolution 20-33.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to adopt resolution 20-33. Motion by Councilor Wiesner, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor, raise your hands. Excuse me. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Kathy. Then we will turn back, I think, at this point to Ray again. Item number 6C is ordinance number 1910, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Codes, several different sections as listed in your packet regarding density provisions for R1 through R4. So, Ray, turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is the second of three for tonight. So this one is not related to the central business district in any way. It is related entirely to your residential zone districts. And it has to do with how the accessory buildings are regulated within those districts. I'm going to share the screen real quick, and this time I will remember to actually scroll through it. So this is ordinance 1910. And this was one of those where staff identified some issues like we talked about previously that caused problems for us as far as not being particularly clear or contradictory. And so we want to clarify and make things clearer so it is easier for everybody to understand. This is the existing text for a accessory building in the residential zone districts. I'm not going to read it to you. But just the problem that we had there, or several problems that we had, was that there were some conflicting information and some not very clear information in there. It talked about single story for an accessory structure, which prevents you from building a mezzanine storage or attic space or any kind of thing like that, even if you can maintain a height limit, which seems to be somewhat restrictive and not really of any purpose. Floor area was not defined. Again, it was one of those situations where we had something in the code that was referenced but not defined. The meaning of within 5 feet is not very clear. It could mean 0, it could mean 5, it could be anything in between. And then again, maximum floor area wasn't really defined either. So our new section of code is a little bit longer, but it's a little bit clearer as well, or we feel it clears up those issues that I previously mentioned by allowing up to 600 square feet, which doesn't change the numbers and the density issue. The requirements haven't changed. It's just the way that we are presenting them. And so we have at least 5 feet as the setback because that meets the building code requirements for buildings to be at least 10 feet apart. There is also the reference to the 10 feet of unencumbered space between the principal structure and the accessory buildings. It talks about the exterior design being compatible rather than specific materials and reflectivity. And then also it talks about how the structure shall not exceed 50% of the building area of the primary structure, so we don't have kind of outsized garages and things like that that dominate the site. So those are the changes there. That's the new text that's proposed. And again, I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Well, turn to Julie first. Any input on this?
No, Mayor, we received no input from the public.
Okay, thank you. So we'll turn back to council for questions or input. And we'll start with Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, Ray and staff, everybody, thank you so much for this. It's, having more clarity versus less in the code is going to result in a lot fewer headaches. So, anytime we can provide additional clarity, less ambiguity, it just benefits everybody, every step of the process. So just thank you for the work that you put into this and combing through the code and identifying, all of that ambiguity. I realize that this is very tedious and I appreciate your effort.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem, can you hear me?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess an off-the-wall question. If a homeowners association doesn't want any accessory dwellings in their neighborhood, can they stop it?
My understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, is that that is a civil issue between the property owner and the homeowners association, that the city does not enforce HOA restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Councillor Servadius?
Just wanted to second Councilmember Heisen's comments. I too appreciate all your hard work. I know it's not always the most glamorous thing is to comb through this and make it more succinct and clear, but it certainly helps when the time comes to have to make some of these decisions, and it makes it easier for the public to know what they can and can't do. So very much appreciated the hard work.
Thank you.
Councillor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, I just want to make sure I understand this particular ordinance. And in this case, we have a standard setback in the rear yard, and this is reducing that standard setback just for accessory structures.
Correct.
And it's not reducing it from where it was before, it's just redefining that. However, what's the reason for the change of the 6 feet between structures to the 10 feet?
So, yeah, and you bring up a good point that I didn't really touch on when I was making my presentation. I apologize. The within 5 feet text, again, when I read that and when it comes to me, I hear or I see within 5 feet, that can mean 0 to me because within includes 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think the intent of that portion of the code was to say at least 5 feet. And the change from 6 feet to 10 feet was driven by changes to the building code. So the building code requires that you have at least 10 feet separation or 5 feet from a property line. Otherwise, you're looking at fire-resistant construction, double walls, et cetera, et cetera.
But excuse me, that exemption is allowed still, so you could have a 6-foot building separation. You would just have to fireproof your eaves or whatever's in that setback.
Right. Yeah, and the concept is here is that a lot of accessory buildings will not require a permit. And so if you have an accessory building that doesn't require a permit and somebody builds it, if they're at least paying attention to what these codes require, they will at least have met that without having to worry about, being inspected for fire-resistant construction. And so we're trying to avoid a situation where, these things, we're allowing people to put them too close together, even though they don't require a permit.
So the only real change other than clarifying the intent, and I would agree with you that the original intent was not to allow for 0 foot off the property line. It was allowed to reduce, because what our standard rear setback's 20 feet, isn't it? For residential?
Yeah.
So this allows for that house to be at 20 feet, and then you'd be able to put a structure in the backyard in that 20 foot and take up to 5 feet. So I agree that that's just clarifying that. But that change, I want to make sure that we're understanding, we are changing the distance between, but it's based upon the IRC. But there are ways that 10-foot separation can be reduced back to the 6 feet. So we're really not changing anything other than just clarifying.
Correct.
All right. Thank you for that. And barring any other comments, I'll be happy to make the motion I move to adopt the ordinance number 1910, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Code sections 1920-120, subsection 10, and 1920-145, subsection 10, 1920-180, subsection 10, and 1920-215, subsection 10.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second that the motion reads exactly like the recommended action in your packet. Motion by Councillor Wiesner, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor, raise your hands. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Way to go, Ray. Let's move on then to item number 6D. So, let me see, what time is it? Okay, so hopefully we'll get through this before 9. We'll potentially extend our meeting. Let's take this on. It's ordinance number 1914, zoning code revisions, central business district standards, repealing development moratorium. And I think we're back with Ray again, right? Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We are going into the main portion of the CBD code amendment now. We talked about the definitions earlier. This is the rest of that essentially. So I'm going to flip to the screen here again, and we'll talk about it. So this is ordinance 1914, and we all know the background. So I'm not going to go into a huge big presentation here, and hopefully we'll get done before 9 o'clock. But pretty much what we're looking at here is this is the remainder of that original Main Street Association kind of wish list, where we looked at the design stuff first, and then we looked at some of the uses and more detail-oriented things, and then also triggered in part by the recent development or attempted development along Pioneer Way. And so we're looking at what it is we want along Pioneer Way. And so we had a number of different kind of intent goals here. The clarity, again, we keep going back to this clarity issue. Community desires, principal versus accessory permitted uses and what that means, and then dimensional standards, which have caused unforeseen consequences. So the clarity of the language starts off with the purpose and intent statement. When we read the purpose and intent statement, it seems to require the development of mixed-use buildings instead of encouraging it, which would essentially require that you have 3 different use types in one building. So that was a clarity issue. There are others throughout the code, and this one just kind of stuck out as being, as soon as you open up that code, you see the purpose and intent statement. It's already kind of going off on a tangent, if you will. We revised the permitted use list, which used to have 60 different uses in it, or currently does, which some of which are duplicated, some of which are kind of confusing or very similar but slightly different to other zone districts and causing issues. That being said, we are going to be, staff is going to be looking at all of the other commercial zone districts and doing a very similar process to what we've done with the CBD to kind of thin some of these things out, make it more clear, make it more reflective of what today's society does. We don't have blueprinters anymore. We don't have a lot of shoe repair shops, things like that. So we're trying to bring it into line with what actually gets developed, and that's where the major retail, minor retail, service-oriented uses, all those new definitions, that's where it comes into play. And you'll start to see it when we come back with the other commercial zones, that it'll start to be all pare down some of these lists so that they're not so specific and very kind of pinpoint accuracy to things that don't need pinpoint accuracy. We talked about the new definitions and use categories. And then we also talk about community desires. The community survey that we did in the spring, we did that online. We had 300 or so responses, which was really good. And we had a vision of an engaging, interesting, and fun downtown area. And we felt like after going through what people, responded to that survey, is that we can provide that with the existing code. And so the existing code is in pretty good shape. It just needs to be cleaned up, polished up, sand down those rough edges, and just kind of bring it into line with what the expectations are. And it doesn't require a huge overhaul from our standpoint. And when we went through that and discussed that with the Planning Commission and discussed it with you, we felt like we were on the right path, and so that's what we've done here. We talk about, this is some of the information that we got from that survey, what it is that people wanted to see downtown. I've shown this graphic many times before. And then the concept of principal versus accessory uses kind of got, it's kind of a strange word to use, but it kind of got perverted at some point. is that accessory uses were kind of, I think, envisioned essentially to be like a accessory building, like we just talked about, a garage behind a house or things like that. And instead, when we applied it to the central business district, it became a second set of uses that became very difficult to be able to distinguish between what a a principal versus an accessory permitted use was. So we just removed it. We made it so that it is clear, so there's not interpretation there, because I think interpretation is what got us into a bit of pickle lately. And then finally, the dimensional standards. The CBD district was the only zone in the code that didn't have dimensional standards for lots. And so we created dimensional standards that are based on development patterns. So we're not going to create any non-conforming lots or create issues that will need to be resolved further on down the line. This will be for any new created lots or any new boundary line adjustments that they'll need to meet minimum dimensional standards. And so, so those are the changes that we have. You'll see the full code with the strike throughs and then the clean copy in your packet. I didn't want to throw everything up on the screen because there was a lot of information there, but I am definitely available to answer any questions. Like I said, we went from 60 uses down to about 25. We included those dimensional standards. And honestly, I think the dimensional standards, looking at this slide here, is the most important component from the standpoint of where we are with recent development pressure on Pioneer Way, that this is going to resolve, I think, a lot of the concerns in the future for any type of lot creation or boundary line adjustments that kind of have unintended consequences. So like I said, I'll end it there and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ray. Any input on this from the public?
No, Mayor, we did not receive any input from the public on this item.
Thank you, Julie. So we will then move to council. Questions? Pretty interesting changes we've got. Any? Yes, Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Now that we've gone through this, and I guess this information has been put out to the Main Street Association, would we want to hear back from their comments before we make any motion to go ahead? I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not sure where we really want to go, but it'd be interesting to see what the Main Street Association thinks of this.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Mack. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Trying to turn one off the other. So, Ray, one of the big tug of wars was a boundary line adjustment that left a from 8 to 16 feet wide. And you said that you've tried to make it so they're sensible lot sizes. Does that mean that they can't cut it so it's 2 triangles now? I mean, I'm just trying to, hate to dig up bad memories, but that's one that's in mine. So answer if you can, please.
Yes, the thing is about it a lot, there are always times that you're going to have ordinances that are in response to one particular project. I think, to be perfectly honest, this is something that should have been done a long time ago. There were, like I said in my presentation, there was no dimensional standards for lots in the CBD, which to me is not a good idea. It creates unintended consequences. And yes, the intent here is to have it so that you have a buildable, rational lot pattern within CBD. So if you're creating new lots, it needs to have a minimum width on the frontage and a minimum depth so that a building can be built there as intended. And you don't have spite strips or protection strips or whatever kind of strips you want to call them. Lots are for building, and that's the intent here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Servadius.
Thank you. Two thoughts. I would second Mr. Mack's thought there as far as allowing a little bit of time. This is one that there's a lot in here, and I appreciate the work. I would be okay with taking a little longer to look at this and making sure the folks down there, primarily represented by Main Street, had a chance to look at this. I had two questions. Where I'm on page 84 in our packet, Mr. Lindbergh. So not the density there, where are the new dimensional standards for minimums for the lots?
Those are on page, oh, I'm sorry. Oh yes, those are on page 84. It talks about minimum lot depth under 1920-320 numbers 3 and 4. So it went from minimum lot depth, and this is for creation of new lots and boundary line adjustments.
Got it. Thank you. The resolution was off. I was missing the strike through, but now when I zoom in, it shows up. I was like, I was losing the reading glasses too, or helping. Hey, and then the other thing then on 8C, building heights can be increased from 45 to 55 feet for non-residential uses. I'm just trying to think of what we've got left down there as far as big chunks of ground. And I dream of some kind of mixed use, condos, boutique hotel on that one corner that's left. That's the biggest chunk that's left down there unless a major redevelopment was undertaken down there. So does this allow, I don't know what the standards are, 55 feet, would that get you 3-ish stories of condo with some commercial on the ground floor?
Yeah, I think that would pretty easily get you 3, if not possibly 4.
Okay. And was there any thought, is that why that was increased, or is that just kind of a standard for an area like that?
Elsewhere in the code, okay, so when you look at that strikeout, just below that in D, it talks about how the building height may be increased to 55 feet with the design review board review. And since we don't have a design review board, we just changed that 45 feet to 55 under C with the same kind of understanding that you need to follow the DRG, the Design Regulations and Guidelines document. And that, I think that, I'm not sure exactly what the history is of the design review board, but it's my understanding that they were supposed to look at things based on the Design Regulations and Guidelines, and so staff does that. And so if a project did come in that had, your kind of your dream project there with mixed uses, maybe a hotel or something, we as staff would review that for the zoning requirements and for the DRG, the Design Regulations and Guidelines. And that talks about all the things that we previously looked at when we did that revision to the the Old Town portion of the Design Regulations and Guidelines. It talks about the street frontage requirements for windows. It talks about the materials and things like that. And those were all the things that we originally had gone through to try and fix or resolve or flesh out at the time that the Main Street Association came and talked to us about that. That was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now. And so that was the first thing that we did. And then the second thing here was to go through the code itself and get some of these things resolved.
Okay, thank you very much. I would just end, my thoughts would be, I support this, but I would probably be, I won't say more comfortable, equally comfortable in the current climate of trying to get the word out to the public and letting people know. I mean, right now, everyone is focused on, because everything is so difficult, they're keeping their head down, they're going to work, they're keeping their family fed. Getting this out specifically to the businesses down there, letting them have one last look at it before we put it through. So unless there's any tremendous urgency, that would be my request of my peers, is just if we could wait a little longer and let everyone have one last look at this, but I support it and I appreciate all the work you guys put into it.
Thank you. Just as a side to that, part of this ordinance was the repeal of the moratorium. And so the moratorium expires in February, I believe. So there is a little bit of time to have some additional review if we want to do that.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion at this time to extend our meeting. We've got another question on this subject, but I think we're going to need to go, just to be on the safe side, until 10 o'clock. Councilor Servadius?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to suspend our rules and extend our meeting time to 10 p.m.
Second it.
Okay, got a motion to extend our rules and extend our meeting time until 10 p.m. Motion by Councilor Servadius, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor, raise your hand. Yep, that passes unanimously. Thanks for your patience. Councilor Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor.
You bet.
I don't have any discomfort in, approving ordinance 1914 tonight. I also don't have any discomfort in putting it off for a last look from the public. I mean, it is a public hearing, but Councilmember Servadius is right. People are focused on a lot of other things at the moment. But just to clarify, Ray, the draft of the ordinance we're looking at now is the result of a collaborative effort and community feedback and feedback from the Main Street Association already, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's my understanding. So I saw a couple head nods when it, kind of pushing this forward. Another couple of meetings was brought forward, but I'm also perfectly comfortable making a motion to adopt it tonight. I'm not sure what my peers' preference would be.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I would prefer to at least wait at least one more meeting. I just think there's so much going on, and especially when this concerns, we have such a small downtown, to be sure that we've made a point of soliciting more community voices, opinions on what they think. Unless, Ray, you don't see a problem with this, do you, to extending it a little bit? We have till February. I hope it doesn't take that long, but I just think that with a lot of things, the city, for something that's important for such a small, important central business district, that it would be helpful to try to solicit some more opinions. Thank you.
I agree with that. My only concern would be the kind of nitpick effect that somebody comes in and wants to change little minor things here and there, and then we end up kind of going out again. But that's fine. I certainly, the more input, the better. I want everybody to be happy. I know that that's not always, going to be the case, but I want us to be as happy as possible with this. So.
Well, I think with some guidance and stuff, we can slough through the nitpicks, say, yeah, that's a good idea, but we got to think of the whole and,
Sure.
So thank you.
Councilor Wassinger.
Yes, I agree. I'm fine with letting our public take one last look at what we've done and accomplished in this time that we've taken, and certainly when everything happened, last year with the CBD and all of the public comment that we had and public concern, and man, it was a big deal, and because of that, you guys have worked so hard, and I appreciate it. I think it looks great. I agree. I support it, but I support letting for such an important thing for all of our businesses, letting them have one last look at it. And yeah, they could nitpick it, but I think it's good, and I think it would be good to let those folks down there that work so hard know that we're about to approve it and let them take a look at it. So but I'm certainly good either way, but I support the way it's written and support holding off, another meeting. So thank you.
Okay, sounds like something for either a December or January meeting then? Does that, yes, Mr. Olborn?
Since we have a public hearing, if you're going to continue it, I would recommend a motion to continue the public hearing. I think our next meeting, regular meeting, is the December 1st meeting, so that would be, if the will of the council is to move forward that way, that's what I recommend. And Brent, your our city attorney, you're welcome to add additional comments.
Councilor Mack?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have a full schedule, and I recommend that we take this up on our Tuesday, January 5th meeting.
It sounds like I see Grant Weed has joined back. Is that it sounds like a
Council
motion.
wants to resume and keep your option open to accept additional public input. The action you could consider is to move to continue your public hearing rather than close this public hearing until a date specific that you prefer.
Okay. Councilor Servadius?
Thank you. I was just also following up on, I guess, Mr. Mack's comment to help make it a touch more formal then. Mr. Weed, are you implying we don't need to name a date specific? Or should we, I'm happy to move to make that to the January 5th date.
The advantage you have in making it a date specific is you don't have to renotice the public hearing. You certainly can so that more people may become aware, but legally you're not required to renotice it if you continue it to a date specific. So.
Okay. Thank you. And I agree, Mr. Mack. You didn't say it, but I'm guessing when you said we got a lot to do, not just this evening, we're almost done, but budget wise remains the focus. So I would move to continue our public hearing regarding this ordinance to our January 5th, 2021 meeting.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to move or continue the public hearing on this item until the January 5th, 2021 meeting. Motion by Councilor Servadius, second by Councilor Wassinger. Any other input or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that passes unanimously. So at this time, the council will move into executive session for the purpose of discussing with legal counsel litigation or potential litigation per RCW 4230-110, Section 1, and acquisition of real estate per RCW 4230-110, Section 1. Factors that bear upon price include property location, condition, possible uses, and economic development. Anticipated duration is 30 minutes. Action may or may not be taken upon return to the open session. Executive sessions are not open to the public, so we will move into executive session right now, and I'll see you in my office in just a minute. Let me see. So am I on?
Not yet, hang on. Okay, Mayor.
So the city council is still in executive session. It is the regular meeting of November 17th. It is currently 9:33, and we're going to extend the executive session until 10 o'clock. So we'll go back into, or I will join them back in executive session. Okay, Julie, or I mean, okay, Lisa? Okay, at this, ooh, geez, just a moment here. Ooh, Lisa. Okay, at this time, the council has come out of executive session, and we will resume the open session for our November 17th, 2020 regular council meeting. The time is 9:52, and I think that I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Oborn, our city administrator, at this time.
Scheduling system, the city was just never able to implement. At this time, it just feels like a better focus is to work on a new accounting system that's outdated, and therefore staff recommends just continuing the implementation, and staff has negotiated a fair termination and mutual release agreement with Tyler Technologies, and then it's the recommendation of staff that council move to authorize the mayor to sign a termination and mutual release agreement with Tyler Technologies for executive time.
So, turn to council. Looking for a motion from council potentially. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the mayor to sign a termination and mutual release agreement with Tyler Technologies for executive time.
Second.
So we have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem and a second from Councilor Wassinger to authorize the mayor to sign termination mutual release agreement with Tyler Technologies for executive time. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. We're looking for a hand. Okay, that passes unanimously. So thank you, council, for a lot of good decisions tonight. Thank you for a lot of your time. We appreciate that, believe me. And if there's no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. Let's go home, and thank you very much. Good evening. Okay, that passes unanimously. We are adjourned.
Good night, all.
Good night.